Rick and Morty is a popular American television show that usually airs on Adult Swim and other viewing platforms that heavily leans on dimensional theory, particularly the multiverse concept, as a narrative device. Here's how, but first a few basics.
Dimensional theory in science and science fiction often refers to the idea that there are multiple dimensions or parallel universes, a concept from theoretical physics, like the multiverse theory. This is different from spatial dimensions, like length, width, and height, and instead refers to entirely separate realities with different timelines, outcomes, or physical laws. Multiverse theory suggests that our universe is just one of many, each potentially having different versions of history, laws of physics, or even versions of ourselves. String theory in extra dimensions proposes additional dimensions beyond our perceivable 3D space plus time, possibly up to 10 or 11 dimensions, and finally quantum mechanics and many-world interpretation, whereby every quantum event spawns new branches, creating an infinite number of realities.
All caught up? Great. Let's continue. How dimensional theory is used in Rick and Morty. Infinite realities. The show assumes infinite universes where anything that can happen does happen. That's why we see countless versions of Rick, Morty, Rick's daughter Beth, Summer, Gary, and even entire planets. For example, in Season 1, Episode 6, Rick Potion Number 9, Rick and Morty mess up their Earth beyond repair and simply jump to a new dimension where they died moments earlier, taking their counterparts' place. The Citadel of Ricks, a hub where thousands of alternate versions of Rick and Morty from different universes coexist. It's a literal manifestation of the multiverse. Each Rick comes from a universe with slightly or vastly different rules or events, highlighting the infinite variability possible under dimensional theory. The portal gun. Rick's portal gun allows travel between dimensions, suggesting that all universes are simultaneously accessible with the right tech, as long as you have nigh omniscience. Naturally, this aligns with speculative physics where wormholes or higher dimensional shortcuts might enable such travel, though purely theoretical. Canonical examples. Evil Morty, who's from a universe that rebelled against the Rick-centric structure of the multiverse. His story involves escaping the known multiverse entirely, hinting at structures beyond even the infinite multiverse. In his words, the Citadel is just one curve on a larger dimensional spectrum. Season 2, Episode 1, A Wrinkle in Time, which deals with quantum uncertainty, where indecision splits time into multiple timelines. This references quantum mechanics' role in dimensional branching. Last but definitely not least, we have the central finite curve. In the Rick and Morty universe, the central finite curve is a multiverse limiter, a structure that separates universes where Rick is the smartest being from all the other possible universes. In Season 5, Evil Morty explains it like this. The central finite curve was designed to block off any universe where Rick wasn't the smartest man alive. Every version of us has spent every version of all of our lives in one infinite crib built around an infinite f***ing baby. How does it work in universe? Imagine the infinite multiverse like a massive map of all possible realities. The central finite curve cuts out a specific subset of these, only the ones where Ricks are top dogs. It does this by filtering realities based on a single condition, which is Rick supremacy, removing and isolating universes where someone else, or something else, is more intelligent or powerful. This essentially creates a Rick-centric multiverse where all major events are shaped by Rick, such as the apocalypse of the first universe from which Rick C-137 gets the Morty with whom he goes on adventures, or the cloning and therein mental destabilization of his daughter Beth. Therefore, no universe can threaten Rick's role as the apex being. This guy makes a superiority complex blush like an anime Japanese cosplay waifu. Judging by that logic, Ricks collectively created the central finite curve, possibly through the Council of Ricks, to protect their egos and dominance, prevent the existence of superior intelligences from threatening them, avoid moral questions raised by less Rick-centric or more humane universes. And if I was the smartest man alive, I'd probably do that too, no kidding. However, Evil Morty is the first major character who breaks the curve, literally and ideologically. He sees it as a prison, limiting free will and scientific possibility. By destroying the curve, he frees himself, and theoretically others, to explore universes not dominated by Rick's. It's a direct challenge to Rick's God complex and the show's deeper existential themes. So one begs the question, are there real-world parallels to something like the central finite curve? While fictional, the central finite curve riffs on real concepts such as the anthropic principle, which is the idea that we observe the universe the way it is because we exist in it, like Rick shaping his observable multiverse. The simulation theory. If a being like Rick can create universes, are we in one? And made by whom? And multiverse theory, an actual concept in cosmology where infinite or near-infinite realities could exist with different physical laws or outcomes. But in reality, there's no known way to filter or control the multiverse, and certainly no curve that isolates realities based on intelligence, at least that we know of. All right, folks, if we were to look at existence through the dark and pessimistic lens of Rick Sanchez, what makes you special in a multiverse? A major and recurring theme in the show is how the Ricks kill one another, holding little to no significance to their and Morty's lives. Heck, part of Rick C-137's origin story is basically him killing all other Ricks to get revenge on Rick Prime for killing his daughter and wife. If infinite versions of you exist in parallel universes, each living different lives, then your identity becomes less about your physical form or even your basic personality traits, which can make it easier to dissociate from your humanity, as Rick C-137 did. Therefore, imagining yourself as part of an infinity of other yous who are more or less good than you should be more about your unique path of decisions, memories, and self-awareness. This idea can be broken down by using the continuity of consciousness, which is basically nerd speak for you being the version whose thoughts you're currently experiencing. For example, even if infinite Mortys exist, the one we're watching or being is experiencing a singular, continuous thread of consciousness. And that's what defines identity moment to moment. You can take that in whatever way you like. Memories and experiences. Each version of you accumulates different memories, traumas, relationships, and accomplishments. These are non-transferable, making each you psychologically distinct, even if genetically identical. Sort of like twins who are identical but have completely different personality traits, even if they are raised in the same environment by the same parents. Moral and narrative identity. You're the stories you tell yourself about yourself. Even if infinite Ricks exist, the actions and choices of Rick C-137 create a distinct self that separates him from the rest. Like how he initially chooses to reject becoming essentially a god, when Rick Prime gives Rick C-137 the teleportation gun, making him different from all the others that Prime had encountered beforehand, which I think was pretty righteous. You know, until his entire family was murdered in an explosion and C-137 eventually made the gun in the end. Talk about fatalism. In summary, the idea of a core self gets fuzzy as the uniqueness of you lies not in being the only version, but in being this version. Your choices still matter because they define your reality, regardless of what other versions are doing. Rick's nihilism is partly rooted in the idea that nothing you do matters because there are infinite versions of you doing everything else. But the show also hints at a counterpoint that is, meaning can be self-defined, even in a meaningless universe. Morty, for instance, chooses to care, love, and believe, even after learning he's one of many. That emotional choice helps define his identity. The idea of interdimensional travel, moving between parallel universes, higher dimensions, or alternate realities, is a fascinating one. But as of now, it's still firmly in the realm of theoretical physics and science fiction. Here's a breakdown of where we are as far as dimension jumping in real life is concerned. There are a few scientific theories that entertain the possibility of other dimensions or universes. String theory suggests that there may be up to 10 or 11 dimensions, with the ones we don't perceive being curled up or compacted. The multiverse hypothesis in cosmology posits that our universe could be one of many, each potentially with different laws of physics and quantum mechanics, including the many worlds interpretation suggest that all possible outcomes of quantum events could occur in parallel universes. However, none of these theories currently allow for travel between dimensions in any practical or testable way. Otherwise, I would be in a universe where I sip on infinite margaritas and gaming for 12 hours straight was good for your health. The other impracticality is that there is no experimental or observational evidence that interdimensional travel is possible. We haven't detected any physical phenomena like exotic particles or gravity leakage that suggest other dimensions are accessible or influence our universe in a usable way. If interdimensional travel were possible, it would likely require exotic matter with negative energy density, like in wormhole theories, and immense energy, far beyond our current technological capabilities. And let's not forget that interdimensional travel opens up wild but speculative ideas, alternate timelines, universes with different physical constants, and even versions of ourselves. These, of course, remain philosophical and speculative, not practical science. So the bottom line is that there's no current scientific method to achieve interdimensional travel, but physics is still exploring the structure of reality. It's not outright impossible, just hugely speculative and beyond current science. And that's a wrap on this dimension. Who knows where we'll end up next time? Smash that like button, subscribe for more intergalactic insanity, and remember, nothing matters, so you might as well turn on notifications. See you in the next timeline.